We're here today talking about the 780 retroactivity bill that just passed off the House floor. One of the things that I think is unique about this bill that we really want to talk about, good things can happen at this Capitol when we decide to work together as a team. You have before you a Republican House member, a Democrat House member, and a Senate member of leadership, and we're here together saying we just want to do what's best for the state of Oklahoma. And we really love the story of this bill. It's taking what the citizens said they wanted to do, and that's what's important. The citizens voted. The best poll is the ballot box. And the citizens told us number one in incarceration on planet Earth is not acceptable. And the citizens told the legislature they would like low-level offenders, and specific low-level offenders, not to be incarcerated. What we've done is, in a bipartisan, bicameral nature, we have made that retroactive, which will lower our prison population with nonviolent offenders no longer being in. But we also added an expungement component. See, criminal justice reform is not just lowering the prison population. Well, that's important. It's also working on recidivism. And that's really what I am almost just as proud of in this bill. We added a component together, working as a group, that would allow expungement of these offenses, so we have offenders that then can have a chance. They can get back into the workforce. They're not carrying that felony consistently with them. And as we go into this next generation of criminal justice reform that we keep doing, we are going to continue to do it in a way that is aggressive, that is appropriate, and is responsive to public safety. And part of that is what you see, and we're going to do it together. This is a bipartisan issue. So when you hear bickering and you hear fighting at the Capitol, you hear the House fighting with the Senate, you hear the Republicans fighting with the Democrats, we're here to show you it's not all like that. This is a true team effort. No one can take any more credit than the other.
What I really want to stress upon what Leader Echols has already talked about is two things. Retroactivity that deals with State Question 780 that just passed in this bill, House Bill 1269, is really looking at two things in particular, fairness and second chances. And as far as fairness goes, fairness is about the fact that there were persons that have been incarcerated that have been in prison on a sentence that is no longer a felony offense in the state of Oklahoma. And fairness is about making sure that those persons have the same chance that people have after that date of July 1st, 2017, when the law changed. And it changed because the people of Oklahoma said, as Representative Echols has alluded to, that they wanted us to do something different with criminal justice, that locking people up and throwing away the key was just not going to be acceptable any longer, that being first in the world in incarceration was just not going to be accepted any longer. So this bill is really about fairness. It's about doing what's right for citizens of Oklahoma. And it's about second chances. It's about making sure that if someone had a low-level drug offense, that we're doing something to help them with drugs. We're doing something to help them be reunited with their families so that they can be good community members again. And that's why it was so important that we had the expungement piece of the felony, so that if you've served time and you've already been out on a low-level drug offense that used to be a felony that's no longer classified that way, that you had an opportunity as a citizen to have that expunged off of your record so that you could find adequate opportunities in the workforce, so that you could find adequate opportunities in housing. We don't want to make it harder for people in the state of Oklahoma to work and to be reunited with their families when they have an issue with mental health or have an issue with substance abuse. We want to use our resources in a way that deals with their substance abuse issue and mental health issues so that we can have strong, healthy families in the state of Oklahoma. And we think that this bill goes a long way in doing that. The work is not over. Passing House Bill 1269 is a first step in a process that's going to take a while. You don't go from first in the world in incarceration to being last in just a day. But this is a great first step, and I know that my colleagues that are standing here with me are committed to steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, and whatever we need to do to make sure that we're a stronger Oklahoma. And we'll now let our closer come up, because right. Senator Bice has got the great task of lifting this off the Senate floor, hopefully tomorrow, and getting this off to the governor's desk for signature.
This is actually the second piece of legislation that I've been working on, but it's an important one. We've been tough on crime, but we haven't been smart on crime. And this legislation, I believe, is smart on crime. Representative Dunnington talked about the expungement piece, and I think what most Oklahomans will benefit from is the help in removing those felony convictions from their record, particularly if they have have had that for quite some time. It makes it difficult to get employment. It makes it difficult to get a job. So with these simple possession charges being reduced to a misdemeanor with State Question 780, this gives those individuals the opportunity to really reset. And I think that's incredibly important. As was mentioned, this is a first step, but we know that Governor Stitt is focused on criminal justice reform. And I think you will see several more pieces of legislation in the future that will try to right the ship and stem the incarceration rates in Oklahoma. I also want to say I think that this is also part of a larger conversation about rehabilitation. And when we're putting people with a felony conviction away, we're not helping them. So programs like Remerge, Women in Recovery, and others are helping prevent them from a felony conviction and also putting them on a path to being productive citizens of this great state. So I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. I look forward to carrying this in the Senate tomorrow and getting it on the governor's desk as soon as possible.
I think it's important to understand that on pieces of historic legislation like this that have a lot of parties, Representative Echols said this on the floor just moments ago before it passed, that when we started this process, there were a lot of parties that were opposed to doing this. And by having gone through this whole process through the legislative session to get to a point where all of those parties that were staunchly opposed were all back at the table and willing to put something together that's going to be good for the citizens. I think the answer to your question is there were some changes that were made, but those changes were made because we believed in getting something done. And what we know in this building is you don't get to have it your way and only your way. And that was the important part from the very get-go of having the Democrats and Republicans, having the House and the Senate all working on this together so that we could be on a team that believed in criminal justice reform and get to that end goal, even if it looked different from the beginning.
You get out and you can't get a job because you have a felony. And then you can't get a lawyer because you don't have any money. And you can't get any money because you can't get a job. And then you can't get a job because you can't get a lawyer. You're stuck in this cycle.
It's your second.
You can't get housing.
You can't get housing. And what you have that ability now, and I love that phrase, your second prison. Representative Dunning said, what we're trying to do is give them that opportunity. And it's really a public safety issue. If you don't want recidivism is a fancy word for someone else was victimized. So every time you lower recidivism, you both give a new individual hope, an opportunity, but you also stop another person from becoming a victim from another crime. That's why that's so important. We're giving people these opportunities. So we're really proud of that provision. It doesn't get talked about as much because it's a little more complicated. It's a weird word, expungement. But it's a little more complicated than retroactivity. It's pretty simple. We know what that is. But it is a critical piece of this bill. And I actually think that will end up helping more people than the retroactive portion. Because if you're watching this right now and maybe you're not in prison, but you have a felony and that's your only felony and you got it in 1982, we're now giving you an opportunity to get that off your record.